Hello, welcome to the great outdoors. I don't historically have a great record of successfully recording outdoors, but I'm on a road trip and I'm hoping you can hear the bellbirds. Maybe you can hear the bellbirds. An amazing part of Australian fauna no one ever talks about. I'm at Dead Man's Range, which doesn't sound nice, but I'm at Clouds Creek, which does. And as I've been driving through the northern rivers of New South Wales, I have been listening to the Canterbury Tales by Chaucer, which really appeals to me because it's framing within framing, as it were. The Canterbury Tales were framed by a whole heap of pilgrims travelling to Canterbury, and here I am listening to them while travelling to Armidale State Forest. Also, I'll be revegetating a place that has been used for historical reenactment. So, perfect, right? The Canterbury Tales. And I've just listened to The Wife of Bath, and The Wife of Bath was fantastic, and I want to put out some thoughts there straight away. Because whilst that particular one of the Canterbury Tales is often discussed in terms of feminist versus non-feminist narratives, sorry about all that, I think it's more, in many ways, it's far more interesting as its own story. The Wife of Bath was the first one of all the Canterbury Tales where you had a character that felt very much like a real person, a real character. And that was unique in and of itself. I really don't think that any of the other characters were characters, and certainly none of the other women. The other women were stereotypes. They were parts of a tale, usually part of a bawdy tale or a device for the story that was being told by the man. This particular one was about this woman's life, and it feels to me very much like Chaucer got a lot of the good oil from a real woman or woman who told him about how she felt about things and how things had worked in her life. Now, the Wife of Bath first tells us about who she is, which is a woman 5 times married, first time at 12, which is one of those little tidbits that make it really seem quite dated by modern standards. So she was first married at 12 and she really loved her first husband. And she was last married when she was 40 to a 20-year-old, and she tells us about all the dealings of man and woman with a very rare good humour among these stories. These stories are often comic or humorful, but not so much does a character with humour about their life come through as the Wife of Bath. Now, the actual tale that she tells is of a knight and a simple quest, and it's a good tale, but the framing is far more interesting and far longer, where she tells us about her life, her views on marriage, on men and women and their relationship, and there's a very realistic acknowledgement of the give and take that happens for two people in a relationship that, again, makes this feel one of the most realistic of the stories, probably, yes, the most realistic of the ones I've read so far. So the Wife of Bath's introduction was fantastic, and then she tells this tale of a knight who does someone wrong and is sent on a year quest to find out what it is that women really want. And I think he ends up marrying a fairy. I'm not 100% certain about that. And the fairy in question does talk about Jesus Christ, which is a bit unfairy-like, I would say. However, overall, I would say that she was meant to be a fairy. During the Wife of Bath's prologue, where she discusses her husbands and her affairs in life, there's a couple of very interesting points that I wanted to mention to myself, or possibly to you if I actually post this, that came to me. So Lady Chudley's Lover was a banned book for many years in England because the C word was used in it. It was used anatomically, not as a swear word or a pejorative or anything, but still, banned. The C word appears here in a similar anatomical type way. Not often. She more often uses coy little words to talk about genitalia, which she talks about most earnestly at the beginning. She seems to be having a go, or Chaucer seems to be having a go through her, at all the churchmen and the prudes who say that one should be chaste. And the wife of Bath states that, yes, chastity is the highest virtue, but if you can't be chaste, you're better to be married. And what did God create all the bits for, if not to enjoy them? So yes, an earthy, fascinating, remarkably contemporary tale, a contemporary seeming individual, and even if you never want to read any of the other Canterbury Tales, I would say that this story would suit most people who like reading widely. The other thing about it that was really, really interesting was, there were many things that were really interesting. I didn't know that shagging was slang from the 1300s. Who knew? If I hadn't have read this, I might never have known. But yes, the wife of Bath talks about shagging. Go Chaucer, right? Anyway, I'm off to the next leg of my journey and the next Canterbury Tale. Thank you for watching if I post this and you watched. Hello, here we are in Cathedral Rock National Park, and let me just see if I can organise the most unflattering possible angle to talk about the Friar's Tale. So next we had the Friar's Tale, and in this one the framing was actually less interesting than the actual tale. We had the framing was basically a little bit of a spat between the friar, who is a member of the company, and the summoner, who was also a member of the company. Now, I don't have internet up here, which is great for camping, but not so great for figuring out what the hell a summoner actually is. It seems from context that a summoner is kind of like where a bailiff sits today, and bailiffs and summoners seem to have been adjacent. It seems like what a summoner did would find people who were guilty of moral crimes, as the church would think of them, and summons them to appear in front of the bishop. The friar talks with great approval of the lovely bishop, but with complete vehemence against the summoner, who brings him people to be fined for, having sex or drinking or whatever. So it's a peculiar thing, and I'm learning a lot more about how the church in England in the 1300s made us money. But the friar and the summoner in the company have a little bit of a spat, and then the friar tells this story about a summoner who came to a bitter end. He was a terrible man. He used to steal money from people. He used to cheat. He had a gaggle of women that he would set to have to seduce men, and then he would discover their crimes and find the men, but let the women go because they were in cahoots. All sorts of really terrible, immoral stuff. Anyway, this summoner is off to summon an old widow and steal 12 pence from her. And on the way, he meets a well-dressed human on a horse. They rather precipitously swear blood rain. And having sworn blood brotherhood, they then proceed on and make all sorts of vows and so forth. Then we learn, because he tells us, that the human is actually the devil, and he's traveling around the world in order to find small gifts to tempt men. He talks briefly about Job, which was a big thing in terms of Job was absolutely tortured, but because he never turned into a bad guy, he somehow saved his soul. I think that's the moral of it. I did read Job a while back. It was tricky. But anyway, what the devil's out to get is some souls, and the summoner, finding this out, doesn't mind at all. He's like, oh wow, we're blood brothers, and anything you get, we're going to share, and it's going to be great, and I'll visit you in your house in the Northlands where there's all this silver and gold one day. Most people would stop to think twice about that one, but no, the summoner's good. Anyway, they proceed on their way to this widow and he's trying to cheat her out of his money, and she swears at him and says, "May the devil take him." And because she means it, the devil gets to take the summoner. It is a pretty cool tale. If you can wrap your head around what exactly a summoner is, which I will do when I have internet again, and if you like the moralistic element of it or can ignore the moralistic element, it's actually a pretty interesting and rather wild tale of this guy traveling with the devil and not caring about it. So, yes, 1300s does summoners. Thank you for watching, if you indeed are still watching, and if I indeed post this. But if I do, there will be more Canterbury Tales later. Bye.